What the fuck happened to comic book video games? Remember the good old days? Yeah, I'm going there. Now back in my day, there were a plethora of video games based on iconic comic book characters. And if you know me, you know I love my comic books. At least for Marvel. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with DC the same way a lot of other people do. I'm sorry. It's not my fault they have such a hard-on for bringing up crisis events that reset the entire continuity just when I'm getting into the current continuity or anything. Not me. It felt like every other week some developer would come forward with a unique idea regarding how to best utilize an iconic license or character in a pristine, high-class interactive experience. Remember Ultimate Alliance? Remember the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction? Remember DC Universe Online? Remember X-Men? Actually, we don't talk about that one here. Let's not. But yeah, there was some good ass shit back then, especially if you were a seasoned Spider-Man fan like me. You had your earlier games like Spider-Man 2000 and Spider-Man the Movie based on Spider-Man the Movie. In these games, your web's attached to the newest celestial body in the cold reaches of space, and outside of some scripted beat-em-up sections on rooftops, you could not do so much as land safely on the ground below, since Peter Parker suffered from Super Mario 64 and Dark Souls syndrome, where his legs were somehow not given a boost of durability after the spider bite. After that, Spider-Man 2 came in and basically changed the entire goddamn industry. It was basically GTA but with a comic book character. It hasn't aged the best obviously, but it pioneered a lot of common tropes we see today, and not just comic book based games, but just action adventure or even open world games altogether. The web swinging mechanics were actually realistic and obeyed the natural laws of physics this time, where it only worked when they attached physically to buildings, and they had a lot of weight and momentum behind how it would influence Spidey's trajectory in the given direction. He was basically a human pendulum. The Spider-Sense-centric combat system was also an extremely intuitive way of incorporating a counter system with a sense of character reminiscent of Spider-Man's own actual powers and acrobatic fighting style. So before someone once again bitches online that Spider-Man PS4 was an Arkham clone, tell them that Spider-Man did it like 5 years beforehand, you big dumb bit. Ultimate Alliance is pretty rad too. It's literally an RPG game like Diablo but with the vast pantheon of Marvel's characters. How could I not like this? Okay, try not to talk about Ultimate Alliance 3 yet, we're getting to it, okay? I could give fuck all about the fact that Thor is seemingly his mainstream 616 counterpart, but he's wearing his Ultimate Marvel costume, which would seemingly fuck up the continuity, because I'm too busy beating up Latvian soldiers, Doombots, and other Marvel-themed mooks. The boss fights are hard as fuck for whatever reason, but hey, these team-up attacks are cool as hell. But there's also that ugly side 8 there. Hulk 2003! They used the same exact voice cast from that film, and just like the film, they all sound bored out of their fucking mind and like they want nothing to do with the script they're currently reading from at that moment in space-time. Not helping things is the fact that the video game actually throws in some comic-accurate Hulk villains like the Leader and Ravaged that just make the film actors stand out that much more as extremely grating to listen to when everything else around them is so much more exaggerated and larger than life. Like they actually came from comic books. Gameplay was split into 2 parts. Despite its execution, I actually still really like the idea of Banner's portion of the gameplay being about maintaining a low profile and remaining stealthy among a bunch of army soldiers patrolling the current area as you try to capture back the Gamma Orb you need to aid with your cure of this disease you call the Hulk. Too bad the pacing is absolutely brought to a crawl when you realize that in order to even have anything exciting happen on screen, you have to get through this fucking hacking minigame first like it's the hot-wired minigame that Insomniac would literally copy years later in Spider-Man. Second half, you get to wreck shit as the Hulk, and it's like Streets of Rage. But there are like 4 or 5 combos only, so it's more like that stripped down version of the time Sonic the Hedgehog became the... Sega, are you that fucking unsubtle? But guys, it's okay because they totally made up for it with Ultimate Destruction because it was fucking rad. It had like the open world environment of Spider-Man 2 and GTA Vice City, but with the gameplay of shit like Twisted Metal, where you're just this unstoppable, unflinching force of devastation and chaos. You could use cars as boxing gloves, a thing that was so fucking cool they referenced it the very next time they launched another failed Hulk film franchise. You could even take a fucking bus and ride it around the streets like a skateboard. You can elbow drop bitches off of skyscrapers. It's cathartic. It's sublime. And look, this was during the time when the Abomination wasn't banished to the land of references in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so he was actually allowed to have prominent roles in stories, and it was kinda cool. He was even voiced by that one guy you might have heard of. Ultimate Spider-Man was so fucking good that its story was canonized into the official comic continuity of the books. Yeah, that shit is canon. Can you say that about your games, Rocksteady? Fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villains sounding ass? Ugh. It feels like these days if you're not Batman or Spider-Man, a game comes out for a comic book character that just doesn't do justice to the material whatsoever, or is a crappy movie tie-in. Insomniac Games is out here making the single best standalone game based on a comic book character of all time, yes, come at me, while Square freaking Enix, which by the way, Crystal Dynamics of all studios, is turning out an underwhelming, technically broken, grind and loot heavy Destiny clone with the Avengers license slapped on for maximum consumer attraction and profit. Except nobody even bought that game! I genuinely hoped Marvel's Avengers would be the game to break the trend of quality standalone modern-day AAA video games based on comic characters that weren't these guys, and ultimately came away extremely disappointed. I thought they absolutely wasted a proper utilization of Marvel's wider rogues gallery of villains. MODOK as an overarching antagonist is fine, but Taskmaster and especially Abomination were so underutilized it hurts. For the latter, it was like the first time he had appeared in anything notable that wasn't a cartoon since Batman v Superman The Incredible Hulk. I'm glad that Emil Blonsky is at least making a comeback in the MCU, since I do think Hulk's corner of the universe wasn't explored to the extent I would have liked, but you seriously had one job with this game. If the entire game was peppered with bosses unique to each member of the team, like Taskmaster for Black Widow and Abomination for Hulk, maybe throw in Mandarin or Living Laser for Iron Man, Baron Zemo for Cap, and Loki or Frost Giant straight out of Jotunheim for Thor. And it could have been so much more of a love letter to these characters while having them face their personal physical and metaphorical demons in a much more compelling plot. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 shouldn't have been developed by these guys! I was ecstatic to see the X-Men and Fantastic Four not being treated like the plague and coexisting alongside their non-Fox-owned brethren. Until I realized it was literally just another Muso game. If they had called it Marvel Warriors or Marvel Muso or something like that, I would have been fine with it, but they had to slap the Ultimate Alliance name on it to drive more sales, when it has basically next to nothing to do with the gems that came before it. Barely much in the way of RPG looter progression, underwhelming team attacks that lack the spectacle of other examples in the series, and the story is basically just a bunch of cobbled together overacted cutscenes without much in the way of an interesting narrative, which is what the other games absolutely excelled at. It's basically Ultimate Alliance in name only, and it really sucks. I guess Marvel Heroes was the better successor in the long run. It genuinely sucks we've come to this point where good video games based on the characters I and many other people love have become the exception rather than the rule. I hope to the one above all that this changes in the future. These are outlandish and wondrous characters with mountains of material to pull from. How do you make games about Hulk, Superman, Thor, and Iron Man boring? Why does Spider-Man get a nice narrative-driven sandbox game pulling from all corners of his mythos, but the X-Men haven't been in good games where they weren't kicking the shit out of Ryu from Street Fighter or Jedha from Darkstalker? Why in pretty much most of, if not all, the modern DC games that have come out as of late has Superman been depicted as some evil, power-hungry prick? Can we just get one game where we actually control him and help people that isn't functionally broken or an overly derivative chore of a game, and also doesn't co-star Scorpion from Mortal Kombat? Even Marvel vs. Capcom fell from grace as soon as Disney started telling them to shoe in mandatory promotions for characters popularized by the MCU movies or other characters with upcoming film-related projects at the time. While, like stated before, treating characters that they didn't own the movie rights to like red-headed stepchildren. I genuinely hope the PlayStation Spider-Man games set an example and a template for other developers looking to dip their toes into the well of characters that occupy these universes, because they deserve better. And so do we as fans. But I'm probably gonna buy that new Suicide Squad game for King Shark alone.